Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another Supatease video. And there was a lot of class changes, a lot of bug fixes that have likely impacted the viability of your specialization. So in today's video, I wanted to review what is the data saying, what are the analytics saying, how are the specializations trending, is it up, is it down, should you be concerned, should you be excited? That is the type of deal with today's video. We're going to be looking at the European region, the North American region, and breaking down every single role and specialization and seeing what exactly is going on. I will be doing an official update to my PvP tier list probably at the end of this week. I want to give it a little bit more time to play through because my opinions of day one are a little bit different than day two, and then it might possibly be different than day three as things unfold and as time moves on. But I wanted to see what the data was saying first to just see if my thoughts about it might be even remotely correct. And if you want to make sure that you're staying up to date with news related to World of Warcraft and educational and entertaining content, then make sure to smash that subscribe button. Your support is greatly appreciated. So the first role we're going to look at is the melee DPS specialization. So we are looking at the North American region. We can see Retribution Paladin is still in control of the top position, although some contenders are starting to rival it. I think it's just really well-rounded. It does really well in solo shuffle with how all of its defensive cooldowns, very easy, straightforward, effective burst damage that catches a lot of players off guard. So it's just well-rounded and easy to play. Arms Warrior has definitely improved significantly, as was anticipated with all of the changes that were coming into it, amplifying its damage, even despite the bug fix that came in on, I believe it was Monday or Tuesday, that reduced your execute deep wounds damage. It's doing a lot better. Arms Warrior is actually closing out now. North America is the second position. Windwalker Monk still holds a really strong spot. It's really good, really powerful. It didn't receive any changes. It was just waiting for Outlaw Rogue basically to get nerfed whatsoever, and then it was just, I think, immediately going to start running over the ladder. Enhancement Shaman is seeing a massive influx. This is a huge representation for Enhancement Shaman, which is usually like down in this bucket. So Enhancement Shaman looks like a really good pickup right now as far as the analytics are concerned. Outlaw Rogue still holds in a solid position for North America, even though it's one of the more complicated specializations to pull off, and it did get nerfed. And some players were, I was thinking initially it wasn't that bad, and some people were like, wait, it's a 16% nerf. But then when you look at the changes that were applied before, it comes more as like a 3% overall nerf from where it was. So maybe it didn't end up being too big of a deal, so Outlaw Rogue is still a good go-to. Subtlety Rogue does appear to be trending down though now, and my personal experiences on it as well. It feels like the main win condition is your Shadow Blades, so if teams play around that and prevent you from attacking during that window, it can feel difficult to end matches. You still have a lot of control. I still feel you can control the pace of the game as far as target swapping and stun locking multiple players, which is nice, but the damage is definitely starting to trend downwards. Unholy DK, even despite like Windwalker Warrior really taking over, is still holding on. You guys are still holding on. I was honestly expecting Unholy DK to fall a lot more than this. Survival Hunter, it's just a cheesy gimmick one-shot with takedown, which is why I think it's still playable, as we can see it represented here. It's kind of similar to Assassination, where it's just a cheesy one-shot with Kingsbane and Deathmark, and then outside of those windows, you're not doing too much. But Assassination is still holding pretty strong. It goes to show just being able to one-shot people can get you pretty far on the ladder, although I don't think that was the intent of the design for this expansion. It can definitely make you viable. Feral Druid is holding towards the bottom still. Again, it's the most complicated melee, so I expect its representation to be a bit lower than every other melee. It's still really good, though. So I'm kind of surprised, because I actually think Feral Druid is actually really powerful. So this representation is a bit surprising. I expect that we'll probably see this go up as time goes on. Much the same with Fury Warrior. I feel like Fury and Arms, when it comes to PvP, that there's just more people who would prefer to play Arms, like unless Fury is distinguishably better. There's a couple of diehard Fury mains, but I feel like it's less of you. Let me know in the comments down below if I'm totally off base with that, if there are equal parts Fury Warrior to Arms Warriors on the Warrior front. But my reasoning here is that when I've seen this in the past, it's usually everyone goes to Arms whenever it's remotely viable. But Fury is one that I think is actually doing really well after the changes, so it's surprising to see it down here. Frost DK as well, towards the bottom, which I think is still really good. It's kind of a cheesy one-shot, although it's one-shot I think is maybe even stronger than Assassination or Survival. So we see like a lot of like kind of cheesy one-shot specs oriented towards the bottom brackets of Shuffle, whereas a lot of these guys have a bit more consistency, although they have cheesy one-shots that may be even stronger, but they also have some consistency outside of those windows. And Havoc, honestly, I think I rated this one too low on my prediction. I think I rated it as like the bottom melee, but I don't even think it's really that bad. It's probably struggling still with all the one shots. Demon Hunter is just a spec that when stun one shot is the meta, then it's not doing too good. But if Shadow Priest and Warlocks are meta, then Havoc Demon Hunter kind of runs the show. And I'm a bit curious to see like what the representation to EU is like. So when we flip over here, we see Outlaw jump to number 1. Confirmed EU players are very intelligent because, man, in North America, like none of us, even hardly anybody, re-rolled to that. We're just a little bit too slow, I guess, because like what the Outlaw Rogue actually in the number 1 position. Subtlety is still strong. Enhance was off, and then Havoc. You can see Havoc actually in the mid trend of the overall chart, which I think is a bit closer to where its representation likely should be. So those are the most significant differences. And there's also more Feral Druids, which if EU players are better, then that's why we know. And then the Survival Hunter is actually at the bottom of this. So NA prefers the cheesy one-shot specs a little more simple gameplay. EU, when the complex specs are good, they just play whatever's the best, regardless of that. Maybe they're less driven by opinion is the distinction I can make for these differences. Now, when we look at range DPS, Marksmanship Hunter is still holding number 1, although Beast Mastery pretty quick on its heels. Frost Mage seemingly is still very powerful. It did receive minor nerfs to its shatter damage and its ray of frost damage, but I think it's still the best mage spec. Honestly, I think they killed off fire, and I think they killed off arcane, which can kind of be represented here on the graph. Fire and arcane are just completely gone. It's mostly just due to its durability. I think the 2 blocks as well, the 2 charges of Ice Block is actually really powerful compared to Cold Snap Ice Block is something to consider. The barriers, the slows, the Ring of Frosts, and with this Hunter representation, like you're only going to get away with the Frost Mage right now. It's just the most durable spec, and it's still just really good. Devour Demon Hunter holding on to a solid position even despite the nerfs that I was expecting to be pretty heavy-handed for it. It's still good. It's still very good. Beast Mastery Hunter, in my opinion, Beast Mastery Hunter should be the number 1 spec. So I'm interested to see what EU looks like, but Beast Mastery to me is just the easiest to play, most effective outsource of damage that you can get. And Shadow Priest is having quite a rise. This is really good. Your top 5. This is a significant upgrade from before, and I was expecting Shadow Priest to move the least amount with the changes because they just targeted Mind Blast. But Shadow seems to be getting into a much healthier position. This might be attributed to the stamina increase and matches going slightly longer, so now you get to a deeper dampening stage and you're more threatening in that position. Affliction is still holding in a solid position as well. Like I said, fire is falling off hard. I am startled by this Devastation representation because Devastation is really good. It's really good. I'm very surprised to see it down here. Ellie, I'm not so surprised. It's kind of cheesy one-shot, 2-minute CD, similar to what we see with Survival for the melee DPS. It is durable, so it can make it, into longer matches and pull off wins, but it doesn't have the same kind of punch or consistency that some of the top-rated specs have. Boomkin's representation, I think it's holding in about the same spot with the Star Surge buff. I've personally been able to do pretty well with it, but I think if you're a beginner player, maybe not so much. Finishing power is still kind of low. Demonology and Destruction are just falling off. Honestly, I would have said Destruction might be worse than Arcane, but I think Destruction Arcane, the representation here is also indicative of my feelings towards their viability paired up together. Demonology likely still carried by the fact that it has a lot of crowd control effects, but Demonology seems to be struggling overall, at least. When it comes to representation, starting to trend downwards. Now, when we compare this to Europe, which is going to be very interesting, we see Beast Mastery does take over. See, Europeans, you guys know what's up. You guys know what's up as far as meta. Fire Mage, though, is still holding on solidly well. And then we see a clear drop off to Warlock and like no Shadow Priests, which historically Europe has, a lot of its Shadow Priests at the top end have retired. So I think in North America might be the Shadow Priest haven, but Devastation is still very low on representation. Boomkin even further. And Demonology is surprisingly the lowest range spec when it comes to European ladder. Maybe it's because of the Outlaw Rogue representation that we saw, because you don't want to play with stuns, right? You overlap stuns with Demo and it's just not as good. The Mortal Strike, it's just not as strong, but that's a bit surprising to see that much of a distinct difference here between Europe and North America. Very, very top heavy towards Mage Hunter and Devour, whereas North America is a little more even. A little bit more even, tiny bit top heavy. We'll have to see as time goes on. Now, healers, this is the big one from my experience with it. So Preservation Evoker, I should have rated as a top healer. It is the best healer. It just has the highest throughput. The Verdant Embrace, crowd control immunity with Nullifying Shroud is really strong, especially in the Hunter meta, to just consistently immune these stun traps that are being thrown at you. Mistweaver is still a very solid pick, well-rounded, just has great throughput. Disc Priest is just fun for doing a lot of damage. I think in Shuffle it has a high representation rate just purely on the basis of that. Resto Druid right now carried by Nature Swiftness Clone, although with not adequate protection, it can kind of flop. I'm not ideally geared for it, unfortunately. I don't have a lot of mastery. I geared for Boomkin. But I think if you are ideally geared, the throughput on it's got to be a lot better than what my Druid is capable of. I'm surprised to see Paladin this low because I think Paladin was one of the most improved healers. I think this is one that I think will go up as time goes on. Holy Priest, I'm not surprised to see fall off. I don't think it's terrible, but the throughput and utility of a lot of the other healers I think is starting to become more apparent, and we don't see a lot of movement on Restoration Shaman. I went into some streams of Restoration Shamans and they all seem to be reasonably positive about it, except they did have the caveat that it's not better than a Druid or a Prez when it comes to like tournament level play, but on ladder they felt like it was a lot better. My Resto Shaman doesn't have any mastery, so when I play it it's impossible to heal on it, but I do think its healing output has been at least scaled up a bit, but I would still put it as the worst healer at the moment when it comes to Shuffle. Now, when we got EUS versus EU, okay, so we can see the Shaman actually trades positions. So there's some Lone Tower influence likely there in Europe, and Mistweaver is still holding the #1 position. So healer balance, I think, is getting better, although this representation is maybe not 100% indicative of that. Let's look at top 5,000, actually. It gets a bit more even when we look at the top 5,000 as opposed to the top 1,000, right? Because when you go to the top 100, you get highly concentrated reviews the further up you go, basically. But at the top 5,000, it looks a lot healthier. Again, I think they could probably afford to bring Shaman up a little bit more than where it was, and maybe Holy Priest a little bit up where it was. But it's definitely a lot better than the start of the expansion where you basically could only play a Mistweaver monk at that point. So that's my consensus right now on what the data is saying. I hope you guys enjoyed the review. Let me know what your experiences have been right now since the class changes as well in the comments down below. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.